And there's a lot of focus today on the consumer. But what about the teams at the center of these bets?
Yeah, remember, each of these sports books has an agreement with a team, league, or sports venue to operate in the state. So we're bringing in now our sports director, Nick Carboni. So what are the rules about athletes themselves betting on sports?
Yeah, Vanessa, that actually varies depending on which league they play in. Let's start with the NFL, where we have seen several players suspended over the last few seasons for 6 games all the way up to a full season or indefinitely for betting. The big takeaway here is that NFL players are not allowed to bet on NFL games or any NFL events like the draft or the combine, but they can bet on other sports, but they can't do that, can't bet on anything while at a team facility or a venue. All NFL personnel other than players are not allowed to bet on sports at all. And nobody affiliated with the NBA can bet on the NBA or any of its properties, including the WNBA, G League, or even the NBA 2K video game league. Players can bet on other sports as long as they are doing it legally and somewhere where it is allowed legally. Betting inside of a team facility is actually not a factor in the NBA. Soccer is something a lot of people around here are betting on. We've heard from local fans who can't wait to bet on Charlotte FC. For the players, obviously, that's a no-go. MLS players cannot bet on MLS matches. In fact, they cannot bet on any soccer of any kind. For instance, a Charlotte FC player cannot bet on an English Premier League match, but they can gamble on other sports if it is legal and they're in a legal place to do so. And we're going to see a lot of betting on NASCAR at Charlotte Motor Speedway and otherwise. The sport was actually pretty proactive about setting up rules about 5 years ago. Drivers or any members of NASCAR teams or an organization cannot bet on races, can't even bet on themselves. They can bet on other sports outside of NASCAR, however. And of course, March Madness is coming up, and sports betting is here just in time for that in North Carolina. So we took a look at some of the rules for NCAA athletes, and it boils down to this. Athletes cannot bet on a sport at any level, amateur or pro, that has an NCAA sanctioned championship. So an athlete could not bet on March Madness, of course, but also the NBA because there are NCAA basketball championships. So that's going to cover most sports because there are NCAA championships in just about every sport you can think of: basketball, baseball, football, etc. So varies league to league, and we'll see how it goes. As I said, a lot of NFL players so far, or a handful, have been popped for illegal sports betting in their league.
Yeah, and so you talked about kind of like the do's and don'ts, but how are the teams here in Charlotte actually trying to educate their players and athletes about these rules? Yeah,
that's very important right now, especially because we're being inundated with sports betting, right? So I reached out to a lot of our teams about that. The Hornets, they actually have somebody from Legal Affairs available and dedicated to all sports betting matters. The NFL reviews its policy every year with personnel. The Panthers have had people from the league in. Charlotte 49ers tell me they educate players on each team at the beginning of every year, and those players have to sign off on their understanding of that policy. They also send reminders to staff and athletes around every major sporting event, so you can bet they're doing that right now for March Madness. And we know NASCAR employees actually got an email reminder today about the do's and don'ts in NASCAR. Wow. So yeah, that's a big part of this too, because the rules vary, and even in the NFL, you can bet on other sports. You can't do it from the building, and a lot of players don't understand that, and that's why they get in trouble.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Nick, we'll see you soon.